You think you're learning, but what if every video you watch is quietly training you to do less, not more? And the worst part is, you're going to feel productive the entire time it happens. You open YouTube thinking you're just going to learn something real this time. Maybe focus, maybe coding, maybe your life. 30 minutes later, nothing changed. You're just deeper inside it. More videos, more ideas, more "this will help me later." And somehow, less actual change. Nobody tells you this part. The system isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. Keep you watching long enough to believe you're improving, not to make you improve. And the worst part is, you're going to feel productive the entire time it happens. So you open YouTube. Not to escape, not to waste time, at least not in your head. This time is different. This time you're figuring things out. Maybe focus, maybe discipline, maybe finally fixing the thing you keep postponing in the back of your mind. It starts clean, intentional, almost disciplined. One video on how to focus better, then another on waking up early. Then a guy confidently telling you he changed his entire life with cold showers, strict routines, and a mindset shift you probably already kind of know, but still feel slightly behind on. You don't question it, because it feels aligned with your goal. And that's where it quietly starts shifting, because nothing feels like a mistake yet. Everything still looks like progress. You're not doom scrolling, you're learning. That's the story you're inside. But the problem is, the system doesn't care about your story. It cares about what you click next. So while you're trying to improve yourself, the environment is slowly reshaping what improvement even looks like. Not something you finish, just something you keep watching. And without noticing it, your original intention starts getting softer, less important, easier to postpone. Because there's always one more video that feels like it matters, and another after that, until at some point, you're no longer following your goal at all. You're just following what appears next, and it still feels like learning. At some point, it starts to feel like the platform is helping you. It responds too well. You type something simple like, "Learn HTML," and instead of giving you a path, it gives you a stream. A beginner tutorial, then a better one, then common mistakes. Then suddenly you're watching salary comparisons for jobs you never planned to have. Nothing feels wrong in the moment, because every step still feels relevant. But what's actually happening is not learning, it's substitution. The system doesn't guide you toward completion, it guides you toward continuation. Every recommendation is designed around one principle, not what gets you to finish something, but what makes you not stop. And the longer you stay inside it, the less your original intention matters, not because it's removed, because it's constantly replaced with something slightly more interesting. So you don't abandon your goal, you just never return to it. The strange part is, your brain doesn't resist this, it agrees with it. Because from the inside, everything feels like progress. You're watching, you're choosing, you're engaged. That is enough for your brain to label it as productive. And the system relies on that label, because it never needs you to understand deeply. It only needs you to feel like you're progressing often enough to not question the lack of output. So a silent swap happens. Effort gets replaced by exposure. Practice gets replaced by recognition. Doing gets replaced by familiarity. And because nothing forces friction, nothing interrupts the illusion. You can spend hours inside learning environments without ever hitting the moment where knowledge turns into reality. The moment where you are wrong in real time. That moment is where real learning begins, and the system avoids it completely, because that's the moment people leave. Creativity doesn't collapse. It dissolves. Not in dramatic failure, but in repetition without output. You stop noticing it because everything still feels active. You're still watching, still saving, still planning. But nothing is being tested against reality anymore, and slowly, your mind adjusts to that state. Ideas become things you consume, not things you execute. Knowledge becomes something you accumulate, not something you challenge. At that point, creativity doesn't feel lost. It feels postponed indefinitely. And that's the final shift. Not that you stopped learning, but that learning stopped requiring proof. And once that happens, everything becomes mentally complete but practically empty. You can understand almost anything without ever having to confront whether you can actually do it. And that gap is where creativity quietly disappears. Not because you ran out of ideas, but because none of them ever had to survive contact with reality. At some point, the strange part isn't that you're distracted. It's that you can clearly explain what's happening and still keep doing it. You can describe the loop. You can recognize the pattern. You can even predict the next step. And then you still click the next video. Because at that point, it's not a choice anymore. Because understanding it doesn't interrupt it. That's the part nobody really talks about. You don't fall into it because you're unaware. You stay in it because every step feels reasonable enough to stay one more minute. And those minutes stack quietly, until one day you realize something uncomfortable. Nothing in your memory of being productive actually required you to produce anything. Just consume, react, save, repeat. You didn't build a habit. You built a loop you don't control. The system never had to force you. It only needed to make staying slightly more comfortable than stopping. And comfort is easier to repeat than effort. So the real shift isn't better content or stronger motivation. It's noticing when your attention stops being something you use and starts being something that gets used on you. Because the moment you step out of that loop, even briefly, something obvious becomes visible. You were never stuck because you lacked information. You were stuck because information replaced action. And the uncomfortable truth is, nothing changes when you realize it. It only changes when you interrupt it, not by consuming differently, but by doing something small that doesn't come with a video explaining it first. So the question isn't how much you've learned. The question is, how much of it has ever survived contact with reality? And if that question feels slightly uncomfortable, that's probably the first honest signal you've had in a while. If this hit something real for you, subscribe to Vex Oriss. Not for more information, but for reminders that break the loop long enough for you to step out of it.